Hi, everyone. This is Rhiannon Payne, Marketing Director at Ruby Central, and I am here with Matheus Richard, who is a speaker at the upcoming RailsConf in Philadelphia this July, as well as a senior developer at thoughtbot. Matheus, it's great to have you here.
Hi everyone, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Excited to chat with you, not just because of your talk this year, but also because I know that this is your first RailsConf or RubyConf that you've ever attended.
Yeah, I've always watched the videos, follow all the conference, and this will be my first international conference as a participant and as a speaker. So I'm really excited for it.
And where are you based, Matheus?
I live in Brazil.
You were also a speaker at a Tropical RB recently, is that correct?
Yeah, it used to be called Tropical RB and now it's Tropical on Rails. I did spoke there last year and this year.
That's awesome. I just want to touch on your journey with Rails a little bit. How long have you been a Rails developer and what got you started down that path? What was your introduction to Rails?
I think I've been working with Rails for about 9 years at this point. I've actually met Ruby and Rails at college during the class. I used to work with several different languages like C++, then Java, and lastly was Ruby. So it felt really magical after doing C++. And one of our last assignment we had was just create a Rails app. And I was amazed at how much I was able to do. And I've been working with Rails since.
How does Rails compare to other programming languages that you've tried when you were in college or at previous jobs?
I think Ruby in particular is super flexible. I didn't have a lot of the boilerplate that I had to write on other languages. It just let me write what I needed. And I think Rails pretty much follows the same process. You don't focus on the boring part. It has all the conventions, all the tools already ready to go, and you just give life to your ideas.
Yeah, that's something that we hear a lot, that it's a really great developer experience and that it's just fun as well. Has that been your experience working with Rails over the years?
Yeah, definitely. Especially when you change languages for some reason, you have to work on a specific project, and then you change languages and change framework, and you do really see how much you took for granted because Ruby and Rails was so awesome that you get used to that, and when you touch other environments, it's just, oh my God, this used to be so easy. It's annoying.
You're at thoughtbot now, working as a senior developer, and I know we have a couple of folks from thoughtbot who are speaking this year, including Reggie, who's one of our keynoters. What's it like day to day in your role there?
Ooh, yeah, it pretty much depends on which project you're working on. It's always changing. So in a way, it's fun to learn all these different projects and different areas in the industry, like people work on health tech or nowadays a lot of AI related stuff. It really depends on which projects you are. So you have to adapt and learn how to navigate a code base. Like every now and then you're changing projects. So in a way, it's really helpful to have Rails because you have that structure, you have those conventions. So even though the code bases are different, you know how to navigate there. In comparison, when you in a JavaScript project or something else, it's always a different beast.
Working with Rails, you have that continuity, even though you're working on maybe several different projects and in several different code bases all at once.
Yeah, definitely. And that's really comforting.
I'm really excited about your talk focusing on Rails internals. I'd love to hear, what was the inspiration? Were there any projects you were working on that inspired the topic, or is it relevant to any open source work or any personal projects you've done?
I guess it all started during the pandemic. I had a lot of free time, so I found a book about interpreters and I thought it interesting. Started reading it and studying interpreters and compilers in 2020. And it's been a hobby of mine since then. And I thought that it would be fun to present that topic to Rails devs in a way that it wouldn't be daunting because there's a lot of difficult topics and a lot of jargon in this area, and it might feel scary. But to give a review of my talk, it's becoming easier than ever to contribute to something like Ruby or Rails, but especially Ruby, just because of the recent changes that are happening with JIT compilers, the new Prism parser, and all of that. We'll touch on that during my talk, and it will be very deeply tech focused, but even beginners will take something out of it. I've really worked hard to make it understandable and approachable to all the audience. That won't be a problem. If you're never took a compiler's class, if you don't have a CS degree, you still can attend and you take something out of it and it will help your day-to-day job.
I love that it's something that's very accessible for beginners to Rails, but also presumably interesting as well to people who are more advanced in their careers. One question I have, since I'm not a developer myself, but I've been involved in the Ruby and Rails community for years, as someone like me or someone who's just getting started learning Rails, what would be the explain like I'm five version summary of what your talk's about?
Ooh. What I'll do is with Ruby or programming languages in general, feel like a black box like a magic program that takes text and makes the computer do something. And what I'll do is I'll break down all the steps that a language takes to make that action. But if you want to take a practical example, think about how you read a phrase. When you read text, at least when I see a phrase, a sentence, my brain kind of splits it in all the words and symbols that I have. So, like words or symbols like question marks, exclamation marks. Then you probably seen this at school, but you build those tree of associations between the words and like how they connect and how they interact, or why you should process first. So, for example, in English, you take adjectives, they come first, then the nouns. In Portuguese, is the reverse. And later, you try to understand the meaning of the phrase. And even phrases that are grammatically correct might not have a meaning. They might don't translate well. We do that all day long with our brains automatically. And a language, a compiler will do the exact same steps. Of course, much more simplified because programming languages are more strict than human languages. But yeah, the process is similar. So we'll dive into that in all of those phases and basically create a mini language, mini interpreter during the talk. And you'll be able to see how it works. And I'll show you the real versions in a real programming language as well. And so you can compare, like, yeah, we built this toy version. This is the real one, and you will see that they are not that different.
So it's going to be very hands-on. It sounds like a demo as well.
Yeah, there will be a fair amount of code, but the code examples are always very short and easy to read, not a lot of text on screen. But the code in it itself, it isn't important. It's more about the structure and the process of transforming the input into something else and then taking that something else and putting it into the next step. It's basically just a pipeline of steps. And I think each step is fairly defined. So it's easy to understand it. If you get stuck, at least you get to understand up to a certain point and you can pause and try to research a little bit more about that specific section that you're not very familiar with. So yeah, it will be very approachable, but on everything.
And what is it that you're most excited to share with the audience? We're going to have a global audience of Rails developers present for the last RailsConf. Is there one key takeaway or example, use case, or project you've worked on that you're just really excited to talk about on stage?
I think one is that you programming languages, compilers, interpreters, they are not magic. And when you see behind the curtains and you understand how they work, everything feels more grounded and less scary. So that's important, like understanding how things work. But also, I think the main point for me, especially for the Rails audience, is seeing how close you are to contributing to a programming language, and you might not expect. and how the landscape of the programming language, especially Ruby, how it is changing in becoming more approachable to contribute, even if you don't know a language like C, which Ruby is implemented with. You are very close to being a contributor and you might not know about it.
Is there anything specifically you can think of that, as an engineer, by understanding how compilers work a little bit better, how could that impact your day-to-day work?
Yeah, we touch on that during the talk, but a few things that come to mind already is one, you'll be able to understand why something is faster or slower. Like you can write things in several ways in Ruby, but they always are the same, and you'll be able to take informed decisions like I'm going to write this in this particular way because I need that speed, or sometimes it doesn't matter for what you're doing, so you just write the most readable, approachable version. So knowing the Ruby VM and the internals, it helps you to take those informed decisions. Also, we are always reading documentation and reading how things work, but sometimes there are no documentations for some things, and you have to read the source code, and sometimes you have to read a lot of C or even Ruby internals, and it's not easy if you don't understand how a programming language works. And I believe that reading the source code is something that everyone needs to be comfortable with, especially if you're trying to get to that senior level. It's something that you just need to get used to because, like I said, sometimes there is no documentation, or worse, sometimes the documentation is wrong or outdated, and you cannot depend on someone else in some cases. Sometimes you have a bug, sometimes you have a strange behavior, and the only way to debug is just to dive into the source code and maybe debug it, modify it, change it.
Yeah, and I feel like especially working with an agency, again, working with many different projects and code bases, this is probably something that you're doing often, where in order to find an answer, figure out how to debug something, figure out how to implement a new feature, you have to be able to go into the source code and intuitively understand what you're looking at. Otherwise, you're not really going to get
Yeah,
very far.
yeah. There's a point in a developer's career that becomes a must. Like it's something that it's very scary at first. Diving into source code, it might feel really overwhelming, especially when it's in a language like C. But once you understand the patterns, you're able to get your way through, even if you don't understand 100%. If you understand how things behave or should work in a higher level, it helps you to at least that entry point becomes easier.
Yeah, and I know attendees are going to be really interested in this, especially because there are such clear technical takeaways and a live demo that you're sharing, which tends to be really engaging. I think it's going to be a
Mhm.
lot of fun.
Yeah, yeah, and that will be also, like I said, we will build a language from scratch, but there will be also like some take-home assignments if you're excited about this. Try these things like a controlled environment, some tasks that you could try out, and at least it's an easy way to start. And if you're really excited, then there's further readings and books and all sorts of material that you can check out.
That's awesome. So remind me after RailsConf, DM me on Slack and remind me to follow up with you and make sure that we have all of those links and resources and follow-up materials so we can reshare that out with folks. Very
Yes,
cool, Matthias.
yeah.
And so my last question for you, again, this is your first RailsConf, your first Ruby Central conference, but also the last RailsConf ever. How does that feel to you to be going to this event for the first time and participating as a speaker, also knowing that it is such a monumental occasion as the last event in going on 20 years now?
Yeah, it's a bittersweet feeling because on one hand, I'm very happy to be attending and to be part of this like historic moment. I'm honored to share the stage with so many great speakers, not only this year but over the years. Yeah, Rails changed my life. It changed how I saw software and changed my career. So I'm glad, very glad that I'm here. But at the same time, I'm a little bit sad because it's the last one. But yeah, but at the same time, there's always other conference, and I'm excited that the community is still alive. But the biggest feeling is just being honored of being part of such great conference and being alongside many great speakers that I respect and admire.
Yeah, we're just happy to have you here and happy to have you be part of RailsConf and hopefully RubyConf in the future as well, because we will continue to host RubyConf now every spring moving forward. So there's always that to look forward to.
Yeah, yeah, I'm really excited for the next editions as well.
Absolutely, Matthias. Thank you so much for your time and really looking forward to seeing you in Philadelphia this July.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be part of the conference. I'm really excited.
Absolutely. We'll see you there.
Bye.